This week on Motor Week, Mike Rutherford checks out Fiat's latest mighty mini, the Fiat Seicento. The Chrysler Neon, has it set the world alight? And how to beat the heat in your Beamer.
Buonasera, or whatever they say in this part of the world. We're here in glorious sunshine in Italy by Lake Como for the launch of this new car, the Fiat Seicento. He lied. In fact, we don't need to be in Italy for great weather and great scenery and great lakes, because we've got Henley-on-Thames, not exactly a lake, I think you'll agree, but here we are just on the outskirts of London on a glorious, glorious early summer's day. In fact, before we go on to the car, can we just look upwards, Simon? Can we just take a look at the sky for a moment? The reason I say that is because that all we've been hearing on the car radio today is how the southeast of England is covered in this cloud of pollution, about how the motor car is ruining the planet. Well, I tell you what, I don't see much pollution around, do you? And come to think of it, I'm breathing fresh, clean air. I'm not breathing the pollution that we keep hearing about through the media. I don't know what everybody's going on about. Somebody show me where this big cloud of pollution is over London and the southeast. I'd like to see it one day. Maybe we'll film it. The problem's not half as bad as you might think, and it's certainly not bad when we've got a highly fuel efficient, state-of-the-art engine as we've got in this car here, the Fiat Seicento. You'll remember the Cinquecento, its predecessor. Well, this is the latest one. It only lasted 5 years, the Cinquecento. It's good to see Fiat replacing their models as quickly as that, because too often, I think you'll agree, cars languish, they're around for too long, they're in desperate need of a replacement. 5 years after the birth of the Cinquecento, we've got the Seicento. I wish they'd make those names a bit easier, but nevertheless. What can I tell you about this car? Well, I think you've only got to look at it for the entire story. I mean, it looks funky, it looks fresh, it looks highly desirable. This is one of these micro cars that's going to become more and more popular in future, with all the restrictions on space and all the propaganda war going on against large cars. There are going to be lots of incentives to buy cars like this in future, and really I can't think of a better micro car at this stage. I've driven some of the Korean and Japanese micro cars of the last few years, and certainly in terms of appearance this one must rate as one of the best. It's built in Poland, not Italy. It's built in a plant called the Tichy plant. So you've got a Tichy car built in the Tichy plant. It's not designed for people like me. It's not aimed at people like me. I'm far too old. It's aimed at a much younger audience. It's aimed at the sort of people who might be, you know, embarking on a driving career for the first time. The sort of people who might have just passed their driving test, 18th birthday, 21st birthday. Can you honestly think of a better present for a 21-year-old than this on their 21st birthday? Great, funky car with real street cred. I mean, can you think of a better car for a young kid to get for his 21st birthday? I say his, could well be a her, because Fiat are really aiming this car at young women, not only single ladies perhaps reaching their 18th, 21st birthday, young career women, but also got to be careful what we say here, because we don't want to upset anyone, but you know, they are aiming this car to a large extent at housewives, people whose husbands are out all day long, perhaps in the company car or their own purchased family car. They need something to potter around in. Again, can you think of anything more suitable for that sort of role? But I think getting back to the youngsters who are going to be driving this car, the great thing about it, it's not just a well-engineered car that looks the part, it's a fashion accessory. So often these days people are interested in what their car says about them, the statement it makes. I think this one makes the perfect statement on behalf of youngsters and even old fogies like me. This car, take it from me, is as cute and as perfectly formed as Naomi Campbell's bottom. Can we say that on telly? Well, being the international freeloader that I am, of course, I've driven this car before in Italy. Didn't happen to have a cameraman with me at the time. Would have made life a lot simpler if I had, but the version I drove out there was the 800 or was it 900cc version. It's neither here nor there. What I remember most about it, it had, wait for it, a whopping 39 horsepower. Yes, 39 horsepower. There are cars on the market today with 400, 500 horsepower. The base Fiat Seicento has 39 horsepower. I'm delighted to say that we're now in the top of the range sporting version, and guess what? We're kicking out a massive 54 bhp. Yes, 54 horsepower. It's conceivable that even a fairly average kind of family car might be pumping out 3 times more power than that. So 54 bhp ain't a lot of grunt, I'm sure you'll agree. However, it's all relative, because this is such a small package. We're talking here about an upholstered skateboard, basically. A very nicely upholstered skateboard. An upholstered skateboard I'd like to live with. But because it's so small, because it's so light, because it's got such skinny tyres, it really does feel like a car with an awful lot more power than the spec sheet suggests. Try saying that. Spec sheet suggests. It's a mere 54 horsepower, and yet as you go around that bend you really can't get that sensation of speed. As you go around that bend it feels more like a sort of 100 horsepower car. You will not be left wanting in terms of performance in this car, I kid you not. I'm at about 3rd throttle here in 4th gear, and this thing really wants to go. I'm literally, I hate that word, I'm honestly having to go easy on the power because it just wants to take off. It's fast, it's furious, it's funky, and it might look like a little city car that can do nothing more than potter around one-way systems, but believe me, this is a goer. On the odd occasion I've been in high performance race cars, single seaters, touring cars, you name it. I'm not saying I've driven them very well, but I have actually sat at the wheel of them and piloted them around some racetracks around the world. I've even driven one of the Le Mans winning cars. And the feeling you get when you climb into a car like that is that it's built for the driver. You know, it doesn't, forget all this nonsense about, oh, it's all wraps around you and, you know, you feel cocooned in this kind of driving environment. That's not important. It doesn't matter what shape the dashboard is. It doesn't, the only thing that matters is the seating position. And you just feel with this car, they really worked out the seating position to suit somebody who wants to attack the steering wheel, somebody who, when in the mood, can start throwing this thing around. I'm sitting here perfectly comfortable. I'm about 6'6", all right, 5'10", and I sometimes struggle, even somebody of my height, with some cars that I'm in, but this is just great. Tons of well, not tons of headroom, but enough headroom, plenty. I haven't got this seat as far back as it will go back even further than this. My arms are in that perfect position for, you know, slightly bent, in that perfect position for taking these lovely country roads we're on. Pedals are just fine, the offset is perfect. What am I doing looking at the ground? I should be looking at the road. If I've got one criticism, I could do with a bit more under thigh support. I think it's the age, it's creeping up on me. I'm sometimes left wanting the base of the seat to be a little bit thicker to give my leg a bit more support. But apart from that, honestly, it's a brilliant, absolutely brilliant driving position. If you're in the back, well, don't go in the back, basically, unless you're Jimmy Clitheroe or Lester Piggott or somebody like that, because this is not a 4-seater for adults. This is a 2+2, or if you like, a 4-seater for 2 adults and 2 kids, or 2 adults and 2 midgets. On the other hand, I take the view that anybody sitting in the back is a non-fare paying passenger, and if they don't like it, I'll drop them off at the next bus stop. So I'm not too worried, quite frankly, about if anybody's uncomfortable in the back. Having said that, you wouldn't want to buy this car with a view to taking out 4 adults. In fact, you couldn't buy this car and take out 4 adults because it's simply not equipped for that job. 2 adults and 2 kids, just about. I've got to say also, the Poles who built this car have seemingly done a very good job, because it feels as well put together as any Japanese, German, Italian, French car. I mean, as good as anything in this league. So don't go running away with the idea that just because something is from Japan, it's built much better. Of course, the Japanese are masters of the micro car these days. They seem to be producing more than anyone else. The Koreans are coming in to some degree. The Italians, of course, have always had this as their territory. When I were a lad, well, in fact, before I were a lad, in I think the spring of 1957, when I was being conceived, honest, the Fiat 500 was being conceived at the same time. And this, if you like, is the spiritual successor to the original, well, it's the actual successor to the original Fiat 500 600. It's moved on 40 years, and it's 40 years of, well, incredible improvements. And I think just as important as that is the fact that they've kept somehow that cute 500/600 styling from the 50s and 60s, and they've transferred that to the 90s. Great car. What can I tell you? What I can tell you is that this, the Seicento 1100 with the R-Bath sporting pack, is a hell of a little car. I've got a mate, you know, who's got a Porsche 911, and he often goes out for what he describes as 20 quid's worth of fun. He puts some petrol in the tank and just has a blast in it. It's the sort of car you can do that in a very different kind of way. We're not pretending for a minute that it's got anything like Porsche 911 performance. In fact, the top speed of this thing is a mere sort of 93 miles an hour. There's not many cars on the road that will do less than 100 miles an hour. This is one of them. But this car is not about top speed. This is a car that you should throw around country lanes in a responsible kind of way. Would you get out of the way, Mr. Duck? It's a sort of car that you really can have an awful lot of fun with, and forget about 20 quid for an hour or two whacking around country lanes. We've been driving this all day long, and we've probably used a fiver's worth of petrol. This is a car that does 58 mpg, up to 58 mpg. Interestingly, the 1100 version only does about 53 miles per gallon. So it proves the point that you don't necessarily get a better fuel consumption with a smaller engine. I'm very impressed. And like I said at the start, I can't think of a better car for a youngster. In terms of size, it's deceiving because it, from some angles, actually looks quite big. I think whatever angle you look at it from, it's very, very pretty. But, you know, from the rear, and from certain angles, it looks like quite a big car. In fact, it's smaller. Wait for it, I've checked the figures. It's smaller than a Seat Arosa. It's bigger than a Mini. Imagine something between the two. Unlike the Mini, though, of course, this is a car that's a reality. The new Mini is coming in the year 2000. The old Mini, the long-standing Mini we've come to love over the last 3 decades or so, is practically dead in the water. This, to me, is the spiritual successor not only to the Fiat 500, which was born in 1957, but it's also the spiritual successor, if you like, to the Mini Cooper. And I'm not sure when the new Mini comes in the year 2000, whether it will be affordable, quite frankly. Well, to sum up then, Fiat Seicento, built in Poland. If you're worried about the Polish connection, don't be. Fiat have had links with Poland, have been building cars in Poland with 1 or 2 interruptions for the last 76 years. I'm sure you'll know what the interruptions are. But it is a all-singing, all-dancing plant that's building cars to Fiat standards and not to Polish standards. And so I wouldn't worry too much about the quality of this car. Of course, you're not getting a BMW or a Mercedes, but you're not paying BMW or Mercedes prices. Far from it. There's one of these cars rolling off the production line in Poland as we speak every 90 seconds. And it's not like they're not used to building cars for Fiat. Like I said, production goes back for the best part of a century. In fact, for 3/4 of a century. And before they were building the Seicento, they were building things like the Cinquecento and the 126 before that. So the Poles know all about building cars, and they build pretty damn good cars as well, if this is anything to go by.
After the break, the all-American Neon. Has it really taken this country by storm? And Ginny Buckley tries out the 306 Estate for size on Motor Week.
The Peugeot 306, the cute, hot hatch with more awards than the Spice Girls. It's fun, it's flirty, and if you'd believe Peugeot's advertising, it's driven by young couples who love to ditch their little devils for a weekend packed with passion. So what do Peugeot go and do to this fun-filled, raunchy little package? Well, they stick this on the back, and hey presto, you've got the 306 Estate. Perfect for couples who want to swap dirty weekends alone for weekends at Disney with the kids. Now where's the fun in that? So is this car going to be an absolute angel, or will it be a bit of a devil? Yes, Peugeot have gone and produced a 306 Estate to appeal to those sensible creatures who are far more concerned with having enough space for the weekly shopping than having dirty weekends. People who find the 406 Estate just too big and that little bit too expensive. And I think you'll have to agree with me that this is big enough for most of us. There's an absolutely huge boot for this size of vehicle, and it's got a nice square loading area, which means you can pack even more into it. The rear seats fold down, and this parcel shelf pulls out completely or folds neatly forward to cover everything up. But, and here is the big but, you can certainly pack loads of paraphernalia into there. But what about the people that all that stuff belongs to? Yep, there may be plenty of space back there, but it's in here that the problems start. With even two average-sized people in the front seats, the rear seat passengers get a really raw deal. There's certainly not an awful lot of legroom, and believe me, I'm no basketball player. It all seems wrong. Plenty of space for your luggage, while you end up struggling to get comfortable. Unfortunately, you don't fare an awful lot better in the front seats. There isn't exactly class-leading headroom. And although these moulded kind of seats may look nice and sporty, I actually found them rather irritating. They have a strange way of holding you in, which may make it a bit difficult for larger drivers to get comfortable. The interior really is the Achilles heel. I mean, just look at the upholstery, it's absolutely revolting. And there's far too much black plastic everywhere. The whole thing just seems really 80s, very old-fashioned and very bland. But hang on just a minute, because I've managed to find a redeeming feature. The stereo. Not only is it controlled via a remote stalk on the side of the steering wheel, which is pretty good for safety, but it's also moulded to fit only the dash on the Peugeot 306, which should deter those car thieves. But then again, there's a downside. It means that you'll never be able to treat yourself to that really hot sound system. As far as I'm concerned, the 306 Estate just doesn't quite cut it like its hatchback cousin. I really didn't enjoy driving this. Okay, a lot of my problems are with the noise levels, but then you add to that the rather bland-looking design, the problems with comfort, that awful interior, and then you top the whole lot off with the cost. Now Peugeot lists this 1.9 turbo diesel GLX model with a sunroof at £15,895 on the road. And if you want passenger airbags as well, you're looking at well over 16 grand. Now if you'd have told me that this car cost, say, around £13,000, then I may have been a little bit more charitable. Personally, I think they're asking far too much. But if you simply have to have an estate, then without doubt save up that little bit extra and buy the outstanding 406. For me, I'm afraid it's the 306 hatchback and dirty weekends any day. Taxi! Paris, please.
With summer on its way, we're soon going to experience the searing desert-like temperature inside parked cars when we get back inside. Leather seats and plastic components such as the dashboard can be painful to touch. Aircon's a must, but it takes a few minutes to kick in. Well, the BMW 5 Series now has the answer to this: an infrared reflecting windscreen. After 90 minutes exposure to the hot sun, the surface temperature on the dash panel is reduced by 10 degrees Celsius. This is but one way a BMW can make the driving environment more comfortable and therefore safer. Powerful air conditioning and a timer to vent interior air prior to your return are now standard on the 7, 8 and now most 5 Series SE models. And it's anticipated that the infrared reflecting windscreens will be available in a few months' time at a price of about £200.
America, the land of the free, the land of enviously cheap petrol. The land where everything seems so big. People drive cars as big as barges. But not everybody drives such big cars. The sensible people in America drive cars like this, the Chrysler Neon. Now you're thinking, this isn't a new car, and you're right, it was introduced in 1996. Since when? It's become very successful as far as European sales go. Its quirky styling is very appealing. Everybody wants a slice of American apple pie, and they get this because the car is built at the Belvedere plant in Illinois, and maybe that's why it's so successful. Now, potential Neon customers wanted more cars in the range, and their prayers have been answered with two new versions, a 1.8 LE at under £12,000, and this, the 2-litre CS. It's slightly sporty, slightly fun, and this comes in at £15,495, and both cars offer tremendous value for money. Now, this is one thing that's rather bizarre about the Neon, the starting procedure. We were mystified yesterday when the car would not start. We had to go and ask, rather embarrassingly, how do you start the car? And it seems you need to put your foot on the clutch and hopefully it will start. It's not done it again. And sometimes you seem to need to reset the whole system and unset it, and then, as if by magic, it starts. What it's all about, I just don't understand. Now, I have to say, I really like this Chrysler Neon. It's solid, it's reliable, it's roomy, and up against, say, a Ford Escort, well, this would be my choice. And the new 1.8 LE at less than £12,000 is an astonishingly cheap car. The Yanks certainly know how to churn them out. This 2-litre CS rather cheekily uses the sport label, but apparently it's what you, the customer, wants. And I, for one, I'm not going to argue with that.
Next week, Mike Rutherford has a smashing time, while Chris Goffey drives the Marlin Sportster next week on Motor Week.